we have reached the last part of the chapter, that is the advent of Europeans of British India. Now in this last chapter we will read about the Anglo-French struggle of supremacy. Now as we already know from the previous videos that the English has sought their power from other European countries like the Portuguese and the Dutch. They had fought wars with them and they have signed treaties with them. The last European power that the British conquered were the French. In the last video we saw how the French was the last European power that came to India in search of trade. Now there were 3 Carnatic wars that was fought between the French and the English, in which it was drawn to the result that the Britishers were forever the masters of the Indian subcontinent and they decide its future. Now the First Carnatic War. Now the First Carnatic War was fought because the English and the French were drawn to the war due to the Australian 7-year War of Succession. The 7-year War of Succession came to an end in 1740. Now, the course, I will like everyone to write these main points and I will be explaining these points in this video only. Now, the Anglo-French struggle for supremacy. Now, as the Australian War of Succession ended, in which the French and the Britishers were always as usual in the opposite side. Now in Hyderabad there was Nizam Asaf Jah. Now Nizam Asaf Jah was old and he was getting his time rid of by already he was always throughout his life he was fighting with his Marathas, with the Marathas. Now he was old and his subordinates were speculating among the divide of powers. Now, in this part, we saw that the French and the English were both intermediating in the kingly region. That is, they are interfering in the local politics. Earlier, no European power interfered in the local politics, but the French were the one who interfered in the local politics. Now, there was a lack of strong kingdom in the southern part of India, that is in the Coromandel coast. They were divided into small states like Mysore, Madurai, Trichipoli, etc. That is the old remnants of Vijayanagara Empire. Now as they were divided, there was no strong empire. They all sought to the power in the southernmost region of India. Now the course of war. Now the course of war, the First Carnatic War was fought in between 1740 to 1748. Now the French were already aware about the relatively weaker position of theirs in India. They knew they were in weak position in India and they did not want to increase their hostilities in India and make Britishers their enemies. But Captain Barnett in India, with the help of his forces, captured some trading ships of French to provoke them. Now the French retaliated. When Captain Barnett seized some of their ships, the French got their power from Captain Admiral La Bourdonnaise. Now Admiral La Bourdonnaise was called from the isle of Mauritius, which was then an island of the French. Now he came with his fleet to fight war with Captain Barnett. Now the Britishers were very much clever. They went to the Nawab of Carnatic in search of war. They went to the Nawab of Carnatic and told them to help the Britishers. Now the Nawab of Carnatic gave them an army. Now the First Carnatic War was famously known as Battle of Saint Thome in Madras. Now here the battle was known as Battle of Saint Thome, which was fought in the bank of river Iber. Now the general of the Nawab of Carnatic was Mahfuz Khan. Mahfuz Khan was leading the war against the French with the forces of Nawab of Carnatic, and the French forces was led by Captain Paradise. Now, in the last effect of the first war of Carnatic, Mahfuz Khan, a strong force of Mahfuz Khan, was defeated with a small army of Captain Paradise. This war, that is the Battle of Saint Thome, was an eye-opener for the European powers. They saw that how a small disciplined army or small disciplined European army could defeat a much larger army of India with greater forces. Now, the First Carnatic War came to an end, and in which the French won. Now, the Britishers were unable to give aid to the Nawab of Carnatic, so they were defeated. Now, the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. Now, Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed between the French and the Britishers at the end of First War of Carnatic, and which sought that the French won, and they got back their hostilities, and they signed that they will not take part in the hostilities of one another. That is, they will occur in their own businesses only, and they will not attack each other, and they will not interfere in the local politics. Now, the Second War of Carnatic. Now, the Second War of Carnatic was fought between the Britishers and the French in 1749 and 54. Between 1749 to 1754. Now, the governor of the French in India was Dupleix. Now, Dupleix was the son of a rich tax collector. He became the governor in India mainly because of his influence of his father. Now, he was a great diplomat and a builder. Now, when he came to India, he was an autocrat. Many of his subordinates did not like him because of his autocrat. Second Carnatic War. Now, after the winning over by the French in the First Carnatic War, Dupleix, then the governor of French, started the Second Carnatic War. Now, Dupleix was the son of a wealthy tax collector. He came to India and became wealthy because of his personal trade. Now, later in those days, the governors as well as the company officials had the power to do personal trade in India. Now, Dupleix also did personal trade. Now, he was one of the major powers of French because of his diplomacies and his policies. He was not liked by his subordinates because of its autocratic behavior. But the steps taken by him mainly became fruitful for the French power. When he came to as the governor of the French, he built fort in the French powers, which was first opposed by the government. As he was opposed by the government, he did the fort work. He acquired many policies. He built fortifications in the French power, which was he was later thanked for his job, because he also paid a large amount of money for the fortification from his own pocket. Now, Dupleix started the Second Carnatic War. Dupleix made Admiral La Bourdonnais to break his promise, because he said that promise was made to be broken, and it could be broken because of a nation's interest. And he was a governor, and he was in the bigger post than the admiral. So he made the Admiral La Bourdonnais to break his promise with the English and start war against him. Now, Dupleix was the first European who wanted to interfere in the politics of the British India. Now, Nizam-ul-Mulk was the founder ruler of Hyderabad. Now, when Nizam-ul-Mulk died, his grandson Muzaffar Jung, the grandson of the Nizam, Muzaffar Jung, wanted to get the power. And Muzaffar Jung was supported by Chanda Sahib, the son-in-law of the Nawab of Carnatic. Now, but Anwar-ud-Din was the son of the Nizam, that is Ulpul. Now Anwar-ud-Din was supported by Nasir Jung. Now Dupleix wanted to increase the power of the French by interfering in the local politics and getting their powers and increasing their powers by getting their territories in the French under the French army. Now the French supported Chanda Sahib and Muzaffar Jung, whereas the Britishers supported Nasir Jung and Anwar-ud-Din. Now the second war of Carnatic started. Now in the battle of Ambur, that is Vellore, the combined army of Chanda Sahib, Muzaffar Jung and the French defeated Nasir Jung and Anwar-ud-Din. Now in the first half of the second Carnatic War, that is in between 1749 to 54, the French won. The combined army of Chanda Sahib, Muzaffar Jung and the French defeated Nasir Jung and Anwar-ud-Din. The Britishers had failed to give adequate aid to the armies of Nasir Jung and Anwar-ud-Din. Now the Britishers failing to aid them, they were defeated. Now after the battle of Ambur, that is near Vellore, Muzaffar Jung became the Subadar under the Mughal rule. Now when Muzaffar Jung became the Subadar, Dupleix was appointed as the governor of the entire Deccan. Now it became fruitful for the French, and Captain Bussy was stationed near Madras. Captain Bussy was stationed with a large army near Madras to get interest of the Goa. Now Robert Clive was then a clerk, but he joined the army. Robert Clive was then an agent of the Britishers. Now he made a plan. He made a plan that is having a divisionary attack. He first attacked the Saunders Madras. Madras, which was under Captain Bussy, and second he took only 200 men and he planned to attack Arcot. That is the capital of Tricipoli. Now Robert Clive made this plan because he knew that when they will conquer the capital of Tricipoli, that is Arcot, Chanda Sahib would rush with his army to release Arcot. Now Robert Clive, only with 210 men, attacked Arcot in August of 1751. Now as a result, as expected, Chanda Sahib took a men of 4,000. Now Chanda Sahib took a men of 4,000 and started to seize Arcot. But he failed to seize Arcot even after a siege of 53 days. Now in between September 23 to November 14, Chanda Sahib seized Arcot, but he failed because Arcot was gallantiously made under the Britishers by Robert Clive and Captain Stringer Lawrence. With only 210 men, they defeated the Chanda Sahib army having 4,000 men. But after that, the Maratha king Morarji Rao came to aid. The Marathas came to aid the Britishers. By now, the Marathas were also the friends of Britishers. The Marathas came to aid. Morarji Rao came to aid Robert Clive and Captain Stringer Lawrence in November 14th. And when Morarji Rao came, Chanda Sahib surrendered and his army was defeated. Now the combined French army was defeated in June 1752, where they were also defeated in Madras as well as in Arcot. Now initially, due to heavy losses, Dupleix was called off in 1754. Now the historian says that the calling of Dupleix was a blunder of the French, because Dupleix was a major diplomat and politician, for which the French got many advantages. Dupleix had great values, as well as he could see what could happen in the future. He was a great diplomat and was a very learned man. And historians said the calling of Dupleix as a blunder in the French, because when the Dupleix was called off, the French were initially defeated. Now Dupleix was called off and they appointed Godehieu as the governor of the French. Now when Godeheu was appointed as the governor, he took up a policy of negotiating with the Britishers. Now the French and the British negotiated in 1754 that they will not take part or take hostilities from either of the armies, and they will not interfere in each other's businesses. They will also not interfere in the local politics, because in the Second Carnatic War it was an eye-opener that the Britishers or the Europeans were not dependent on the local kings. Rather, the local Indian kings were dependent on the Europeans in the war. Now, the Third Carnatic War. Now, the succession of Austria over Silesia. When Austria wanted to get his area over Silesia, the 7-year-old war of the Austrian War of Succession started in Europe. It was between 1756 to 1763. Now, as the war started, the Britain and French were, as usual, at the opposite side. Now, the third battle of the Third Carnatic War started, which was held between 1758 to 63. Now, this war was mainly started by the French. The French army under Count de Lally in 1758 captured some forts at Madras and the fort of St. David at Vijayanagaram. Now, when they captured, the English became very offensive. Under Admiral D. Act, they captured some trading ships of the French and inflicted heavy losses at Masulipatam of the French. Now the course of war started. Now the Battle of Vandivas, which is in Vandavasi, which was held in January 22, 1760, was the decisive battle of which European power was going to be the supreme master of India. Now, in this battle, the combined armies of Count de Lally and General Bussy was completely routed by General Ayrcourt of the English side. Now, when the French were completely destroyed in the Battle of Vandivas, Bussy was taken as prisoner. Pondicherry was gallantly defended by Count de Lally for 8 months. But finally, he had to surrender Pondicherry in January 16, 1761. Now, Pondicherry was finally surrendered to the Britishers, and Count de Lally was taken as a prisoner. He was taken back to England, where he was returned to French in 1765. But finally taken as a prisoner and executed in 1766 by the French army only. Now, the Peace Treaty of Paris. Now, the Peace Treaty of Paris was signed in 1763, which restored the factories of the French. But they only became side armies, but the English became the supreme power. Like the other European powers like Portuguese, the Dutch, which were defeated in Battle of Bidara in 1759, the French only remained as the trading companies in India, while the Britishers became the supreme power. One cannot ignore the Battle of Vandivas, because as like Battle of Plassey, which decided that the Britishers will remain in power rather than the Indians, the Battle of Vandivas decided that which European power will become the supreme power of India. Now, in this Battle of Vandivas, both Indians became sepoys as well as they carried as an army. Now, when this battle, whatever may be outcome of Battle of Vandivas, it was finally decided the Europeans will become the power of India. There was lack of foresight among the Indian leaders. They could not see what the European powers are forming in between them. Now, why the Danes? Now, the Danes came to India in 1616. Between 1616 to 1620, they established factories in Tanjore as well as Sirampur in Kolkata. But these factories were never important. They inflicted heavy losses. But the Danes were better known for their religious policies. They converted the most population of India into Christianity. Now, causes of English success and French failure. Now, the East India Company was amalgamated with several rival companies. So they had a board of directors with the shareholders. Now, the board of directors were annually elected by the shareholders only. Now, as it was a private enterprise, there was greater zeal among the people and greater confidence. So, the decisions were made at the round table conference of the shareholders only. So, the decisions were passed. Whereas, the French East India Company, the government hold a 60% share. Now, when the government hold a 60% share, the shareholders had lesser zeal for the profit because the government guaranteed the profit with them. However, the loss or the profit they get from India. When the government guaranteed, there was only lesser board meetings that were held for the French East India Company, and they did not have board meetings for more than 60 years. Now, there the decisions were not effective. Now, here, as it was decided by the government, the decisions came very late. But when it is a private enterprise, there was greater zeal and greater confidence among the people, so the decisions came very fast. The second point is superior navy. Now, the Britishers learned from the Portuguese how to use naval power. The Britishers had superior navy because of their victory over Spanish Armada and the British victory over the French navies. Now, as they had superior navies, they had some inferior navies, and they could not control their navy, and in which most of the wars were owned by the Britishers. Now, third point is that the Britishers had three major ports for the transportation. Now, the three major ports were Kolkata, Bombay and Madras. As they controlled three major ports, it was easier for them to carry out goods. But the French, on the other hand, had only Pondicherry. Now, the fourth and the final point is that the Britishers had long list of able commanders under them, like General Ayrcourt, Major Stringer Lawrence, then etc. But on the French side, they had only duplex. Now, we will come to the point why the English succeeded while the other European countries failed in India. Now, first, the structure of company. Now, as I have already told that the English East India Company was a private enterprise. So, most of the decisions were taken by the shareholders only. So, the decisions came very fast and did not take late. While the other European countries, the company was held by the government. So, decision came very late and they had lesser zeal for getting profits. Now, superior navy. The Britishers had learned the importance of navy from the Portuguese only. So, they got huge navies under them and they had able captains to command the navy. Third, the Industrial Revolution. Now, the Industrial Revolution in British led to invention of very machines like spinning jenny, steam engines and other machines for metallurgical work. So, when the Industrial Revolution started, they had many machines for continuous production of goods so that they made huge profits. Now, the military skill. The British army were more disciplined and more ferocious than any other armies. They were selected on the basis of their qualities rather than the basis of their race in India. Now, stable government. Now, the British acquired a stable government in 1688. So, when they had a stable government, other European powers did not have a stable government for taking quick decisions. There was a revolution in 1788 in the French, but this revolution was finally calmed down when the Napoleon came in 1815. Now, when Napoleon came in 1815, the country got huge losses because of his poor financial policies. Due to his poor financial policies, the French went bankrupt. Now, lesser zeal for religion. Now, when the Europeans came, they had all the companies have zeal for religion, for Christianity. But the Britishers did not have any zeal for religion. Now, there is another point is that why the English succeeded, because every of the European companies that came to India had the imperialistic view. They saw India to make a new colony. The Britishers also saw it, but they never neglected their commerce. While other European countries neglected their commerce in search of imperialistic views, Britishers never neglected it. They also gave equal importance to the imperialistic view as well as commerce. So that when the war started between Portuguese or the Britishers or the Dutch or the Britishers or as well as the French and the Britishers, the British had greater firepower, greater funds, always have bigger firepower, bigger funds than other European countries because of their commerce only. Now, use of debt market. Now, the Britishers also used debt market for getting loans for their wars. Given the guarantee, they will win the war. Now, when they use debt market for getting loans, they have larger funds for the war. And as we all know that funds, because the country which has larger funds will always win the war. Now, this is the end of the chapter, Advent of Europeans of British India.